Drop yourself into a forest 20,000 years ago with the clothes on your back and nothing else. Give yourself optimistically a week. Most of you wouldn't make it that long. You wouldn't be killed by a saber-toothed cat. You wouldn't even get to the part where you starve. You would die of something much less dramatic, something so quiet that, in a modern hospital, you'd be home by dinner. A bad tooth, a small cut, a cold rain, a routine drink of water. Your ancestors lived their entire lives surrounded by the things that would end yours by next Tuesday. Not because they were tougher than you, because they knew things you don't, and their bodies were tuned to a world yours has never met. We've talked before on this channel about how those ancestors actually had more free time than you do, which is true and important, but it's only half the truth. The other half is that the hours they did spend living were lived in conditions a modern body simply cannot handle. You are an extraordinarily specialized animal, optimized for an environment that didn't exist until the day before yesterday. Let's start with the smallest possible thing that could kill you and work up from there. Imagine 20,000 years ago, you bite down wrong on a piece of bone. A molar cracks. The pulp inside gets exposed, and bacteria get in. In modern life, you have 10 days to wander into a dentist and get it fixed. In the ancient world, you have a few weeks before the infection works its way down into your jaw. From there, it gets into your bloodstream. This is called dental sepsis, and for most of human history, it was simply a way people died. Until the year 1900, abscessed teeth were one of the leading causes of death in adults across the world, all from a small piece of grit on the wrong bite. George Washington famously had agonizing dental problems his entire adult life, and he was the wealthiest man in his country, with access to the best care of his century. No painkiller would have helped you in the meantime, except maybe alcohol. If you survive your teeth, you have to survive your immune system, or more precisely, the gap between your immune system and theirs. A hunter-gatherer's gut is a thriving rainforest of microbial life. The immune system that goes with it is trained from birth to live in close partnership with parasites, bacteria, and dirt. Your gut, in comparison, is a small, tidy garden with about a third of their microbial diversity. And tidy gardens, evolutionarily speaking, are not what your immune system was built to live in. In 2017, a Stanford team led by Justin Sonnenberg studied the gut bacteria of the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last hunter-gatherer peoples on Earth. The Hadza eat roughly 150 grams of fiber a day, mostly from wild tubers and baobab fruit. The average American eats about 15. We are, in microbial terms, on a starvation diet. Drop your modern gut into their world, and the first thing that happens is the food itself fights back. The rough tubers, the unfamiliar bacteria, the parasites coming along for the ride. You would spend the first month bedridden if you survived it at all. Diarrhea, dehydration, fevers, the kinds of things that quietly killed enormous numbers of people throughout history. Most of them babies, none of them in any condition to be useful at hunting, while they, eating the same meals, just keep walking. Now suppose you make it through your teeth and your gut. If you happen to be a woman of childbearing age, the most dangerous thing in the ancient world wasn't a predator, it was a pregnancy. Researchers using skeletal evidence and modern hunter-gatherer data have estimated that 1 to 2% of pregnancies killed the mother. In the Hadza today, the rate is about 1,000 deaths per 100,000 births. In a modern developed country, the same figure sits at around 10 or 20. Which means giving birth in the ancient world was roughly 50 to 100 times more lethal than it is now. And most women had not 1 or 2 pregnancies, but 5 or 6. The risk compounded with every child. By the time a woman had finished her reproductive years, her cumulative risk of dying in childbirth could approach 10 or 15%. It was, statistically, one of the most dangerous activities a human being ever performed. This is part of why so many ancient skeletons of young women show signs of dying right around the age of their first birth. It is one of the quietest tragedies of the deep past. Half the women who ever loved you in the deep past did not get to grow old. They didn't die of monsters or weather. They died bringing the next generation into the world. So teeth and pregnancy and a gut that hates the menu. And we haven't even talked about the cold. You live almost certainly in a heated room. The air around you, day and night, sits within a few degrees of your body temperature. Your ancestors did not. A single soaked layer of clothing in a winter wind is, to a modern person, a survival emergency. To them, it was Tuesday. They had the right clothes, the right shelters, the right body fat distribution. They had been training their whole lives for the weather you'd be standing in. They knew, without thinking about it, exactly which leaves would dry a body, which fires would survive a drizzle, which shelter angles would block the wind. You, dropped into the same forest, would learn most of these things by failing at them, and most of those failures are not the kind you get to learn from twice. Hypothermia doesn't usually give second chances. If you're starting to suspect that being a modern human is more fragile than you thought, this channel runs almost entirely on that suspicion. All of this brings us to the deepest reason you would not survive their world. It's not your body, it's not your immune system, it's that you don't know what they knew. The Harvard anthropologist Joseph Henrich has spent his career on this idea. He argues that humans don't actually survive harsh environments through individual intelligence. We survive them through what he calls our collective brain, a vast, slowly accumulated library of skills, passed mouth to mouth for thousands of generations. Which plants will feed you, which will kill you only if prepared one specific way, how to track a wounded animal across dry ground, how to start a fire in rain, how to read the sky for a storm 3 hours before it arrives, where the water is safe to drink and where it carries something you cannot see. Which sounds in the dark mean nothing and which mean run. None of this is instinct. All of it has to be learned, and most of it takes decades. A skill that takes one body a lifetime to master, a culture can pass on in a single afternoon. A Hadza 8-year-old knows more useful survival skill than most modern adults. Henrich likes to illustrate this with a story. In 1845, a British Royal Navy expedition led by Sir John Franklin sailed into the Arctic looking for the Northwest Passage. 129 men, mostly young, mostly healthy, equipped with the most advanced technology of their century. They got stuck in the ice off a place called King William Island. And over the next 3 years, every single one of them died. They starved while seals swam under the ice beneath their feet. They froze while standing on a landscape full of building material they could not recognize. Here is the part of the story that should chill you. The Netsilik Inuit had lived on that exact same island for thousands of years. They thrived there. The name they used for the main harbor of King William Island translates roughly to lots of fat, meaning seal fat, meaning food, meaning home. To the Inuit, this was not a wilderness. It was a well-stocked pantry, organized by hands they had spent millennia training. The British, with the best technology of the Industrial Revolution, starved to death in a place the locals called lots of fat. This is the gap. It is not strength, it is not cleverness, it is not bravery. It is generational knowledge, woven so deeply into a culture that the people carrying it don't even notice they have it. You were raised in a world built on a completely different library. You know how to drive, navigate a phone, decode a tax form. Your ancestors would have died of your daily life inside a week, for exactly the same reasons you would die inside theirs. Neither of you is the soft one. You are simply two animals shaped by different worlds, each perfectly adapted, each completely lost outside the others. You are not better than them, and they are not better than you. Which leaves one strange and quiet thought to take home. You are an expert. A deeply, profoundly skilled expert in a way you almost never think about. It's just that the world you are an expert in is barely 10,000 years old, and the world that made the human body, the one yours still secretly is millions. Somewhere in there you are still a small, clever ape sitting in front of a screen, wondering why everything aches.